G'day guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to the preview to round 5, Gather Round. So excited for this, of course. If you don't know, I do live in SA, so really excited to go to the footy this weekend. We have a lot of interesting games to coming up as well. So let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into the first game that I want to take a look at. Adelaide v Geelong, the game that kicks off Gather Round, and of course Adelaide hosting the first game yet again. I thought maybe Port Adelaide would get the first go this time, but nonetheless, this is a massive contest. Geelong got a good win last week against Melbourne, and the Crows have been one of the best teams of the comp so far this year. Did lose to the Gold Coast though. So a couple of interesting topics to look about this game. The Crows are coming off a 5-day break and obviously played in really warm conditions up in the Gold Coast and fought out a really tough contest to the final moments, while the Cats had a pretty cruisy game and coming off a 6-day break. Now the Crows have probably been the better team so far this season and have been very potent up forward, as most of you would know, and the Cats have been a bit up and down. They had a really good performance against Fremantle in round 1, and then since then they've really been poor. Melbourne was a little bit of a bounce back last week, but it was Melbourne at the end of the day. Now, Blitzars didn't play last week. He was a late out, and this will be the second time the Crows have played a really good defence. Obviously, the Gold Coast last week was their first test, which they did fail. Of course, that was a little bit controversial, the ending part of that game, but still, they did lose it. And I think really the big talking point on the Adelaide Crows is they have to find some more goal kickers. On the weekend, they had 5 from Philthorpe, 4 from Walker, and 3 from Fogarty. And the rest of the team, I think they only had 2 other goal kickers. So I think against a team like Geelong, they're going to have to find some different avenues to goal to win this game. And on Geelong's point of view, they need to find some consistency, need to find that benchmark where they can hit every week. I think that last week was a little bit of a turning point. Now, I'm actually going to be picking Geelong in this game. I think they're just starting to get their season up and going. They haven't been perfect by any means so far, but their record in Adelaide is pretty solid, and they are coming off of an easier game and that extra day's break. So that's why I'm picking the Cats at the moment, and I do think that Jeremy Cameron's going to play a lot more forward this week rather than going up the ground and playing a floating role. I think he's going to play a lot more deep forward. After that Friday night, massive contest between Collingwood and Sydney at Adelaide Oval, of course. The Pies coming off 3 really good performances in their last 3 games. The Sydney, very good last week against North Melbourne, and the game before that, they were able to seal it at the death to get their first win of the season. I think the Pies' number 1 priority going into this week is they have to fix up their missed opportunities kicking a goal. They honestly should have won that game against Carlton by 40, 50 points. They missed a lot of opportunities in that 3rd and 4th quarter to make that margin a lot bigger. And Carlton, the game wasn't even done until the last 10 minutes, even though most people realised that Collingwood were going to win. But the scoreline wasn't too far away from Carlton in the end. On Sydney, though, very interested to see how they line up. We've got Logan McDonald, who was in the reserves last week, had a pretty good performance, kicked 3 goals in a loss. So I'm interested to see if the Swans will bring in Logan McDonald straight away, or if they go with Peter Adams. Even though he had that kick that most people have seen in that set shot that he missed, he has actually performed quite well for Sydney so far this year. You got to give him his credit because he hasn't had a very good start in Sydney over the last few years. The last couple of weeks, though, he has performed well. He's really done well to hold up that second ruck spot. He has done enough up forward. So I'd be interested to see if the Swans will decide to go with Laddams or McDonald at this stage. There has been some talk potentially of McDonald going back. However, considering he did play the VFL up forward, I'd be surprised if we see him down back. I would give him another week in the reserves and then maybe potentially bring him in round 6. That's just me. Now, I think the biggest matchup's going to be between Nick Dacos and James Jordan. I'd be very surprised if Jordan goes to anyone else. And the one thing that Dacos has to keep eye on is the fact that Jordan does tend to jump off of his opponent when they are attacking. He does try to chain up on offense, so if Dacos isn't playing a defensive mindset as well on Jordan, then Jordan can get in the other way. But I'm going to be tipping Collingwood. I think the fact that their early season form has been much better than Sydney, I do trust them a bit, and I think they look a little bit more potent up forward in my opinion. Cleary and Hanley both performed quite well for Sydney on the weekend, but it was against North Melbourne and they were well down. However, my brother, who of course will be getting into his tips later in the video, but he has actually tipped Sydney. He has said that no Houston will be a massive out for them. They did struggle in opening round without him. The forward line of the Swans will be able to stretch the Collingwood defence, and the Swans would have gained a lot of confidence from last week against the Roos. McCartan as well was very dominant against Nick Larkey last week. I think it's going to be a very close game. Adelaide Oval, the one other thing as well is Collingwood do have a good record at Adelaide Oval, so that's another reason why I'm tipping them as well. But I think it's going to be a great contest. Saturday evening, this game, at Norwood Oval, Bulldogs v Brisbane. I think this is a real danger game for the Lions. They haven't been performing at their best by any means so far this season, but they've been able to bank up early wins. Now, the Dogs have been punching up above their weight class throughout the entirety of the first month of the season with all their injuries. This will be an interesting call on Brisbane's point of view, who goes to Sam Darcy, because right now he's one of the best players in the competition. the only way that the Bulldogs win this game is if Darcy has a massive performance. The thing the Lions have to do is lock him away. The obvious answer would be Harris Andrews. However, if Andrews goes to Darcy, he won't be able to play his intercept game. So we'll have to wait and see if the Brisbane Lions would prefer his intercept game or his defensive lockdown role. Now, one thing on the Lions that I don't think people have failed to mention is the fact that even though they don't have Danaher, they have still had a really good run with their forward line. They've got a different mixture in there. I like the look of Logan Morris so far this season. He's really grown into his own. I think Charlie Cameron's on the cusp of having a massive contest, so who knows if he can do it this week. And the Bulldogs defense have been able to hold up well, but I do think they're going to have to be exceptionally good. Everything's going to have to go right in their defense to win this game. That's why I'm going to be ticking Brisbane. I think that their mids will get on top in this contest, and if they can get it inside their forward 50 enough, the Lions, they'll kick a winning score. And I think Harris Andrews is the perfect matchup for Sam Darcy, so I think he can lock him away. And if the Bulldogs can't get it to him enough, then I really don't find another way that the Bulldogs can kick a winning score here. Aaron Norton, I guess, is another option, so he's going to have a massive performance as well for them to get over the line, the Dogs, and I just can't see him being able to do that. And then the final game I want to take a look at, preview quickly, is Melbourne v Essendon. Saturday night, standalone game at the Adelaide Oval as well. This game, I think, is 50-50. After coming off the bye, I'm going to be interested to see how the Bombers come into it. Last time these two teams met in Gather Round was in 2023. Essendon actually won that game, surprisingly, when Melbourne were in a good form. Now, the Bombers did show some decent signs against Port Adelaide in that final quarter when they were able to break away from them a couple of weeks ago. But the game was a scrappy grind, and Port Adelaide really were with them until the final few minutes. That can't be taken into huge account, but on Demons' point of view, they've shown a couple of okay signs, but overall, they have been incredibly disappointing. And I think if Simon Goodwin does go and lose this game, I think his job will start to be put into jeopardy. So it's a massive game for the Demons. Now, I'm going to be picking Essendon because I think their weakest line is their defense and Melbourne's weakest line is their offense. If you take those two factors out of the game, I think I trust Essendon's forward line a little bit more. It may not have the bigger name, but I think that I trust them a bit more. They looked really good a couple of weeks ago against Port Adelaide. So I'm actually picking them to have a good performance. At the moment, Melbourne's midfield really doesn't stand up at all. So if Essendon's midfielders, who have probably been their best so far this year, can stand up with Caldwell, Merritt, if they can find their own ball and get it into their forward line enough, I think they can kick a winning score. However, my brother has tipped Melbourne. He has said that the Demons will be getting a rocket throughout the midweek on their contested game and need to change it up in their midfield core. He's thinking Rivers and Harvey Langford should be getting more opportunities, and he does see that Max Gawn will dominate in the ruck. I think he's really looking at it as a backs against the wall kind of game that the Demons are going to respond. This one should have been swapped around with the game against Brisbane and the Western Bulldogs, put that at 0 with the Melbourne-Essendon game and bring the Brisbane Bulldogs game to Adelaide Oval, but I mean, I guess that's in hindsight. They made these fixtures months ago. Let's get to our full tips. So my tips for Gather Round are Geelong to beat Adelaide, Collingwood to beat the Swans, the Gold Coast to beat North Melbourne, Carlton to beat West Coast, Brisbane to beat the Dogs, Essendon to beat Melbourne, Fremantle to beat the Tigers, Giants to beat St Kilda, and the Hawks to beat Port Adelaide. Now, my brother's tips for Gather Round are Geelong to beat Adelaide, Sydney to beat Collingwood, Gold Coast to beat North Melbourne, Carlton to beat the Eagles, Lions to beat the Dogs, Melbourne to beat Essendon, Dockers to beat Richmond, GWS to win over the Saints, and the Hawks to beat Port Adelaide. Now, of course, if you've been watching the previews in the previous round so far this year, me and my brother have been giving a certainty tip every single week. So this week, I am picking Carlton, who lost last week to Collingwood. I'm picking them to beat the Eagles. And my brother, surprisingly, this was a very weird choice when he told me this, but he's adamant. He has picked Melbourne, who lost last week to Geelong, to beat Essendon this week. So I have tipped completely against that. He's put his certainty tip on it. Of course, if you don't remember, every single certainty tip we get wrong this year, guys, we'll have to eat a chili per wrong answer in the Boundary Riders Award live stream at the end of the season. So I've got 2 wrong so far, so 2 chilies. My brother's only got 1 wrong. Hopefully Essendon can get up and I can get that one right. Let's take a look at our tipping comp. So this is for the channel. We had about 28 to 30 of you join at the start of the season. At the moment, we have Ethan Sports, who has jumped into the top spot after using his Joker this week. He was able to get 12 tips, which was 6. He has jumped into the top spot by 1 tip. And I think the top 4 at the moment, Paul's Vikings, the top dog, and Lucas have all used their certainty tips at this stage. At the moment, I am sitting in 12th spot with 25 tips. So 6 off the pace, which isn't too bad, I would say, because I haven't used my Joker at the moment. So I'm pretty happy where I'm sitting at the moment. My brother, only got 4 last week. Really embarrassing. He should be ashamed of himself. He only got 4 and he dropped behind me. So he's dropped all the way down to 15th. But guys, that's basically all the preview we have to round 5 gather round. Really excited. Really happy that the Festival of Footy is coming to SA. If you guys are here in South Australia, get excited because gather round is one of the most exciting parts of the footy calendar, and if you haven't done it before, it's a really exciting thing to come over and witness. Really excited for this round. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it, but for now, we'll catch you all in the next one.